Greetings, Mason Storm here. I was going through my pantry and I noticed I had a squash. Figured it was time to use it, so I made some soup. This is how I did it. I had half a teaspoon of cayenne pepper powder, 1 teaspoon of garlic, 1 tablespoon of curry powder, about 1 cup of butter, a cup of cream, 1 box of broth, I think it was chicken broth, and I had about an onion, couple potatoes, and a squash. The squash isn't that big, so this isn't a massive soup or anything. I'm going to begin the process by peeling the potatoes. Just going to gently take my time with the peeler and slowly work my way around the potatoes to clean off all the skins. Then it's time for the squash. Now when it comes to doing the squash, your better bet is to cut it in half, put a little bit of oil on it, and just roast it. Because once it's all soft, it's really easy to separate the guts of it. But there's another method of doing it where you peel the squash, and then split it, and then take the guts out. And that's what I opted to do here, using a combination of a peeler as well as a knife, because sometimes it's hard to kind of get around the right edges of it. As long as you're cutting everything away from yourself, you should be good, and you won't cut your fingers off or your hands, because that would be unfortunate. And once you have your squash fully peeled, which really sucked to do, but it was definitely faster than roasting it, we split it in half. Now I'm doing the stem to stern method, and that usually works out pretty good. And then I'm going to be using a spoon to separate the seeds and some of the fleshy parts of it, the stringy stuff, because that can be a little bit non-desirable. The spoon works really good. The thing with doing the squash this way, instead of having it like pre-roasted or whatever, it's a lot harder. And because I took the skin off of it, that's kind of the reinforcement of it. So it's kind of soft on the inside. So it might be easier to split it in half and then take the stuff out and then peel it, but it'd be harder to peel it because it's split open. So you're kind of in a difficult situation, one that cannot be easily anticipated. It's quite perplexing. What to be done? I don't know. But a spoon does do the job with diligence. I should point out too that when you're separating the seeds, you don't want to spill them on the floor or step on them, because it really makes the cleanup process take quite a bit longer. And now I'm just cubing up the squash so it'll cook faster. Just strokes in one direction, 90 degrees, and rinse and repeat. I'm going to do the same to the potatoes for the same reason, so that they're smaller and they cook faster, which really helps with making the soup, because that way it doesn't just take forever. That, and I don't really know what would happen if you tried to do everything all whole. It would probably just not work. Probably like burn something on the bottom of the pan and have the rest raw and cooked. How fresh. And now I'm just going to slice up the onion as well. That way we have our bases covered as far as vegetables go for our lovely soup. So we're going to be using a pot on the stove top to make this, and we're going to go for kind of a medium heat. We want to have a bit of a simmering action going on. So we'll toss in our squash, potatoes, onions, and then we'll start filling it up with some broth, probably a couple bowls worth, and give it a little bit of a stir. And then remember that we forgot to add our butter, so we better do that now before we forget. We'll just toss that in there. I'm a big believer in endgame seasoning of soups, where you kind of make them and then you do your seasoning right at the end. That way you can try it and taste what it's like. That's why I haven't added anything yet. So we're just going to let this thing simmer away here, probably half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour, whatever it takes till it is all tender. Depending on how big your chunks of stuff are, will determine how long it takes to get all nice and soft and tender. And our simmer, you don't want to be crazy on your boiling, so just kind of a light boil, bit of a simmer, stir it occasionally. Eventually it'll cook and it'll get done. And once that occurs, we're going to get out our old immersion blender, and we're going to just start blending this to try to get rid of all forms of physical large particles. We're going to blend it all nice and smooth. Now there's a couple ways you can tell if you got it blended nice and smooth. One is you take the blender out, get the spoon in there and see if you can pick up a piece of potato or something. The other method is you do it like you're making paint or you're painting. You mix your paint till you think it's mixed, and then you mix it again and it's ready every time. That's just a pro tip that I heard once that I thought was kind of funny. And then we're going to take our immersion blender out, and now we can proceed to start seasoning up our soup. Now the thing with seasoning soup, especially small batch stuff like this, is season it a little bit, give a little bit of a stir, taste it, and then do more seasoning if needed. It's better to go a little bit light and then add to it, because the second you have a whole cayenne pepper in there, you're kind of out of luck for ways to kind of go the opposite direction. There's always those old stories of someone mistaking sugar for salt or salt for sugar, and they put it in whatever it is they're doing, and it's like, oh, that's the wrong one, so we'll add more of the other one and it'll compensate. You know, if you got salt in your coffee, it doesn't matter how much sugar you add to it, it's going to taste terrible. Unless, of course, you like salty coffee, which maybe that's a thing. I don't know. It could be. Last ingredient I add is my cream. Now, the cream really affects kind of your physical property of the soup as far as its, well, creaminess factor. And I usually find that if you add some of it and it's not quite thick enough, you can just kind of cook it longer or add more. And as far as adding too much, I don't know if that's possible. I mean, butter and cream, those are like the tastiest things in existence. And just having those in soup is probably going to get you most of the way there to being awesome. So, add what you need to do, get it to kind of taste the way you want, and then you're good to go. When it comes to cooking and making soup, I think there's kind of two general ways of doing it. There's following recipes verbatim, and there's doing what I'm doing here, which is following principles and ideas and finding ways of just taking the ingredients that I have and making the best I can with them. This squash soup here turned out really good. I was really happy with the flavor that it had and the thickness of it. It was just creamy and delicious. Fantastic. I hope that after watching this video you'll be able to do the same and enjoy yourself some proper soup. I did end up making some bread to go with mine, and I thought that went really well. And also, when you're making soup like this, top with a little bit of sour cream and some cheddar cheese, and it goes a long way to enhancing the flavor of the soup. But that's just how I roll, I guess. So let me know in the comments below if you do this style of soup making, or you have any questions, concerns, or suggestions. If you like my content, please like and subscribe. And until next time, stay awesome.